We're doing it in every way. And with that, I'd like to just introduce Dr. Birx, who's going to discuss some of the things that we strongly recommend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you know over the last months we've taken very bold action to stop the virus from coming to our shores. And because of that, we gained time to really get together and understand the progress across the globe of what has worked and what hasn't worked. We now need to appeal to every single American so that they can have their role in stopping the spread of this virus. We've talked about things before about washing your hands, but we really want to focus on if you are sick, no matter who you are, please stay home. If someone in your household is diagnosed with this virus, the entire household should quarantine in the house to prevent spread of the virus to others. The reason we're taking these strong and bold steps is because we know there is virus spread before you develop symptoms, and then we know that there's a large group, we don't know the precise percent yet, that actually is asymptomatic or has such mild cases that they continue to spread the virus. If your children are sick, please keep them home. Now to our older population or those with pre-existing medical conditions, everyone in the household needs to focus on protecting them. Everyone in the household. I want to speak particularly to our largest generation now, our millennials. I have the mom of two wonderful millennial young women who are bright and hardworking, and I will tell you what I told to them. They are the core group that will stop this virus. They're the group that communicates successfully, independent of picking up a phone. They intuitively know how to contact each other without being in large social gatherings. We're asking all of them to hold their gatherings to under 10 people, not just in bars and restaurants, but in homes. We really want people to be separated at this time, to be able to address this virus comprehensively that we cannot see, for which we don't have a vaccine or a therapeutic. The only thing we have right now is the amazing ingenuity and compassion of the American people. We're appealing to all Americans to take these steps, to protect each other, and to ensure that the virus doesn't spread. These guidelines are very specific, they're very detailed. They will only work if every American takes this together to heart and responds as one nation and one people to stop the spread of this virus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birx. So just to connect with what I mentioned to you in previous discussions in this room, and Dr. Birx said it very well, that in order to be able to contain and curtail this epidemic to not reach its maximum capability, we have a two-pillar approach, one of which I believe has been very effective in preventing the substantial seeding, and namely the travel restrictions that we've discussed many times in this room. The other, equally, if not more important, is when you have infection in your own country, which we do. And, you know, I could read the numbers, but they're really essentially what we've seen yesterday, incremental increases both globally as well as in the United States, with the curve doing that. So therefore, the kinds of things that we do are containment and mitigation. What we're mentioning now, the guidelines, when you look at them carefully, I believe if the people in the United States take them seriously, because they were based on some rather serious consideration back and forth, some may look at them and say they're going to be really inconvenient for people. Some will look and say, well, maybe we've gone a little bit too far. They were well thought out. And the thing that I want to re-emphasize, and I'll say it over and over again, when you're dealing with an emerging infectious diseases outbreak, you are always behind where you think you are if you think that today reflects where you really are. That's not word speak. It means if you think you're here, you're really here because you're only getting the results. Therefore, it will always seem that the best way to address it would to be doing something that looks like it might be an overreaction. It isn't an overreaction. It's a reaction that we feel is commensurate, which is actually going on in reality. So take a look at the guidelines, read them carefully, and we hope that the people of the United States will take them very seriously, because they will fail if people don't adhere to them. We have to have, as a whole country, cooperate and collaborate to make sure these get done. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. President, a lot of people are concerned about how long all of this might last. Do you have any kind of estimate that if Americans really were to band together and do what the White House is suggesting, how quickly you could turn this corner?
My favorite question, I ask it all the time. How many times, Anthony? I think I ask him that question every day, and I speak to Deborah, I speak to a lot of them. I get the opinion. So it seems to me that if we do a really good job, we'll not only hold the death down to a level that is much lower than the other way, had we not done a good job. But people are talking about July, August, something like that. So it could be right in that period of time where it washes through. Other people don't like that term, but where it washes through.
So is this the new normal until the height of the summer?
We'll see what happens, but they think August, could be July, could be longer than that. But I've asked that question many, many times, yes.
That being said, Mr. President, Americans today and looking forward are living with so much anxiety and so much fear facing uncertainty right now. I'm curious, how are you talking to your own family about this? How are you talking to your youngest son? Do you empathize with this sense of anxiety? People are really scared.
Yeah, no, I think they are very scared. I think they see that we're doing a very professional job. We've been working with the governors and frankly, the mayor's local government at every level. We have FEMA totally involved. FEMA has been, usually we see FEMA for the hurricanes and the tornadoes. Now we have FEMA involved in this. They've been doing a fantastic job locally, working with people that they know because they work, like as an example, in California, in the state of Washington. They work with them a lot on other things, and they're very familiar, so they're working on it. What you can do, and all you can do is professional, totally competent. We have the best people in the world. We have really the greatest experts in the world. And someday soon, hopefully it'll end and we'll be back to where it was. But this came up, we came up so suddenly. Look, you were surprised. We were all surprised. We heard about it. We heard about reports from China that something was happening, and all of a sudden we did make a good decision. We closed our borders to China very quickly, very rapidly. Otherwise we'd be in a very, as Tony has said numerous times, we'd be in a very bad position, much worse than we would be right now. You look at what's happening in other countries. Italy's having a very hard time. But I think that what we do, and I've spoken actually with my son, he says, how bad is this? It's bad. It's bad. But we're going to be hopefully a best case, not a worst case, and that's what we're working for. Yes.
You can clear up some confusion on two key fronts. One is about your own test. The other is about containment efforts. Is the administration considering more aggressive containment options, like a quarantine, a national curfew, restricting?
Well, we have that very much. Yeah, we have that very much, and we've been pretty aggressive. We were early with Europe, but we were very, very early with China and other places, and fortunately we were. And as far as containment here, we're coming out with strong suggestions. And, it's becoming a little bit automatic. You look at people, they're not doing certain things. For instance, they're obviously not, I wouldn't say the restaurant business is booming, and bars and grills and all. People are self-containing to a large extent. We look forward to the day when we can get back to normal.
To be specific,
what's your second
are you considering instituting a nationwide lockdown, a nationwide quarantine? The NSC knocked that down, but there's still some questions about how it all came
at this point, not nationwide, but there are some places in our nation that are not very affected at all. But we may look at certain areas, certain hotspots, as they call them. We'll be looking at that, but at this moment, no, we're not.
The second question is, you said you had your coronavirus test Friday night. the White House doctor's office put out a statement around midnight Friday saying that no test was indicated. So when exactly was your test administered?
Well, I had my test. It was late Friday night, and the reason I did it was because I had no symptoms whatsoever. So the doctor said, you have no symptoms, so we don't see any reason. But when I did the press conference on Friday, everybody was going crazy. Did you do the test? Did you do the test? So very late on Friday night, I did the test. And he may have put out, or the doctor may have put out something at I don't know what time the letter went out. Maybe it was put out by somebody else. But the results came back, I believe, the following day. And we tested negative.
But the question is, how could the White House doctor's office say a test wasn't indicated, implying that you hadn't had one when in fact you had?
Well, I told them that, and I went totally by what they said, the doctors, more than one. They said you don't have any of the symptoms. They checked what you're supposed to check, and that I didn't have symptoms. But I did a test late on Friday night, and it came back probably 24 hours later or something. They sent it to the labs, came back later. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you had a teleconference with the nation's governors today.
Yeah.
And in that teleconference, you told them if they need things like respirators or masks to try to get it on their own. What did you mean by that, and what will the federal government do to help?
If they can get them faster by getting them on their own, in other words, go through a supply chain that they may have, because the governors, during normal times, the governors buy a lot of things, not necessarily through federal government. If they're able to get ventilators, respirators, if they're able to get certain things without having to go through the longer process of federal government, we have stockpiles now, and we're ordering tremendous numbers of ventilators, respirators, masks, and they're ordered, and they're coming, and we have quite a few at this point. I think, Mike, we have a lot. But if they can get them directly, it's always going to be faster if they can get them directly if they need them. And I've given them authorization to order directly.
Mr. President, one of the big weaknesses in our healthcare system is surge capacity for medical facilities, and I wanted to ask what precautions, what planning is being done to get China was able to build hospitals in a matter of days. Are you prepared to use the Corps of Engineers or FEMA to start building surge capacity that we may need in a couple weeks?
Well, first of all, we hope we don't get there, and that's what we're doing, and that's why we're taking a very strict look at this. But we also are looking at areas, and not only looking, we're expanding certain areas. We're taking over buildings that aren't used. We're doing a lot in that regard. We hope we don't have to get there, but we are doing a lot in that regard.
Mr. President, could you clarify something? These guidelines say stay home if you're sick. Yesterday, the Vice President said no one should worry about losing a paycheck if they stay home when they're sick. But the House bill exempts companies of 500 employees or more from the paid sick leave requirement, and that's 54% of the American workplace. Why is it a good idea to only require small businesses to provide paid sick leave?
Well, we're looking at that, and we may be expanding that. We are looking at that. We want fairness. We want it for everybody. No, we're looking at that through the Senate, because as you know, the Senate is now digesting that bill. So we may very well be adding something on that. Okay? Good question.
Two questions here, Mr. President. One, going off of what he was asking, how many ventilators and how many ICU beds do we have right now, and will it be enough?
I could get back to you with that number. We've ordered a lot. We have quite a few, but it may not be enough. And if it's not enough, we will have it by the time we need it. Hopefully, we won't need them.
And you'll give us the exact number?
Yeah, we'll be able to give you.
They have not given us an exact number.
We can give you a number. If it's important, we'll give you a number. Go ahead.
Okay. And yesterday you said that this was under tremendous control. Do you want to revisit that statement if we are going to be experiencing this until July or August, 5 more months ahead of
When I'm talking about control, I'm saying we are doing a very good job within the confines of what we're dealing with. We're doing a very good job. There's been a tremendous amount of the way they're working together. They're working hand in hand. I think they're doing really a great job. And from that standpoint, that's what I was referring to. Yes,
you're not saying it's under control, right?
I'm not referring to it, meaning the. Yeah, if you're talking about the virus, no, that's not under control for any place in the world. I think I read. No, I didn't. I was talking about what we're doing is under control, but I'm not talking about the virus. Yes, please.
The stock market took another hit today. Is the U.S. economy heading into a recession?
Well, it may be. We're not thinking in terms of recession. We're thinking in terms of the virus. Once we stop, I think there's a tremendous pent-up demand, both in terms of the stock market and in terms of the economy. And once this goes away, once it goes through and we're done with it, I think you're going to see a tremendous surge.
Are you looking at any domestic travel restrictions? I know that's been on the table before, but is that firming up at all?
We're not really. We hope we don't have to, Steve. We think that hopefully we won't have to do that, but it's certainly something that we talk about every day. We haven't made that decision.
Mr. President, I ask you, doctors and nurses in this country are telling us across the board that they're terrified of this virus, of the fact that they could get it, of the fact that they might take it home to their families. What can you say to assure healthcare providers in this country that the federal government is doing something today to ensure that they get personal protective equipment to protect themselves and their families?
Well, I think the federal government is doing everything that we can possibly do. We made some very good early decisions by keeping people out, by keeping countries out, certain countries where the infection was very immense. I notice a lot of people are talking about South Korea because they've done a good job on one side, but on the other side, tremendous problems at the beginning. They had tremendous problems and great numbers of death. I think that we've done a fantastic job from just about every standpoint. With that being said, you look, no matter where you look, this is something, it's an invisible enemy. And but we are speaking all the time, not only with the people, but also the professional people, the nurses, the doctors. They have been doing a fantastic job. We are also working very much on getting them the kind of equipment that they need. And for the most part, they either have it or they will be getting it. But remember this, we want the governors, we want the mayors, we want them locally from a local standpoint because it can go quicker. We want them to work. And we had a great talk with the governors today. I think it was a really great talk. There's a tremendous coordination. There's a tremendous spirit that we have together with the governors. And that's pretty much, for the most part, bipartisan. Yeah.
Mr. President, you told John that you think this could wash through, as you said, July, August. You just told Steve when he asked you about a possibility of recession. You said it may be. I'm curious, if there is a recession, when do you think that might hit?
Well, I don't number one, determine recession. I just say this. We have an invisible enemy. We have a problem that a month ago nobody ever thought about. Nobody in I've read about it. I read about many years ago, 1917, 1918. I've seen all of the different problems similar to this that we've had. This is a bad one. This is a very bad one. This is bad in the sense that it's so contagious. It's just so contagious, sort of record-setting type contagion. And the good part is the young people they do very well, and healthy people do very well. Very, very bad for older people, especially older people with problems. My focus is really on getting rid of this problem, this virus problem. Once we do that, everything else is going to fall into place. Yes, please.
A lot of rumors last night that you were going to put in a national curfew or some kind of text.
I've been reading. I've been watching.
Right, exactly. Me too. Your people were saying this is a foreign disinformation campaign. Is that what's going on? Are people messing with us on the internet?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that I can't tell you if they are or not. And, I think a lot of the media actually has been very fair. I think people are pulling together on this. I really think the media has been very fair. I think it could be that you have some foreign groups that are playing games, but it doesn't matter. We haven't really determined to do that at all, and hopefully we won't have to. That's a very big step. It's a step we can take, but we have not decided to do it. Jennifer, go.
Mr. President, two things, one on airlines and one on Jeff Bezos. Can you talk a little bit specifically about what you'd like to do to help the airlines, first of all? And then second of all, we heard that Jeff Bezos has been in contact with the White House daily. Can you say what he's been asking for or proposing?
Well, I've heard that's true. I don't know that for a fact, but I know that some of my people have, as I understand it, been dealing with them or with him. And that's nice. We've had tremendous support from a lot of people that can help, and I believe he was one of them. As far as the airlines are concerned, we're going to back the airlines 100%. It's not their fault. It's nobody's fault unless you go to the original source, but it's nobody's fault. and we're going to be in a position to help the airlines very much. We've told the airlines we're going to help them.
They want $25 billion.
But we're going to be helping. We're going to be backstopping the airlines. We're going to be helping them very much. It's very important.
What will you do about the stock market, sir?
$25 billion for the passenger carriers and $4 billion for cargo.
We're going to be looking at it very strongly. We have to back the airlines. It's not their fault. In fact, they were having a record season. Everybody was. They were having record seasons, and then this came out, and it came out from nowhere. So not their fault, but we're going to be backing the airline, yeah.
The stocks continue to fall today. Would the White House support negative rates?
Best thing I can do for the stock market is we have to get through this crisis. That's what I can do. That's the best thing we can do. That's what I think about. Once this virus is gone, I think you're going to have a stock market like nobody's ever seen before.
People will be voting tomorrow,
Mr. President, the other day you said you don't take
He'll be back in a second. He'll be back in a second. I think the question that I think maybe John asked about until July, the guidelines are a 15-day trial guideline to be reconsidering. It isn't that these guidelines are now going to be in effect until July. What the president was saying is that the trajectory of the outbreak may go till then. Make sure we don't think that these are solid in stone till July. Yeah. That would be the outside number. Yeah.
Mr. President,
you've been criticized.
Hold on 1 second, please. Go ahead.
Follow up. Senate Republicans, do you want Senate Republicans to change the package that passed the House last week? Even though
I think they may make it even better. Look, they're working together very well with the House. They're working very much in unison, like the question before. They're working to only enhance it and make it better and make it fair for everybody. And that's what we're looking to do. So we may go back and forth with the House a little bit, but both will be in a very positive fashion. Please.
Yeah, Mr. President, these new guidelines say avoid social gatherings in groups of more than 10 people. The CDC's recommendations yesterday were for people to avoid gatherings of more than 50 people. What's evolved in you and your team's thinking in just the past 24 hours? And also, what exactly do you need to see in a stimulus?
Well, let me just have the professionals answer that. Would you like to do that?
Great. Thank you, and thank you for that question. So we have been working on models day and night around the globe to really predict, because some countries in our very early stage, like the United States, we've been working with groups in the United Kingdom. So we had new information coming out from a model, and what had the biggest impact in the model is social distancing, small groups, not going in public in large groups. But the most important thing was if one person in the household became infected, the whole household self-quarantine for 14 days, because that stops 100% of the transmission outside of the household. And as we talked about early on, it's silent. We had another silent epidemic, HIV. And I just want to recognize the HIV epidemic was solved by the community, the HIV advocates and activists who stood up when no one was listening and got everyone's attention. We're asking that same sense of community to come together and stand up against this virus. And if everybody in America does what we ask for over the next 15 days, we will see a dramatic difference, and we won't have to worry about the ventilators, and we won't have to worry about the ICU beds, because we won't have our elderly and our people at the greatest risk having to be hospitalized.
Dr. Burks, can we ask you to comment on the Doctor?
Go ahead. Yes, Mike. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very productive call today with governors. We talked about the new rollout of testing that we described yesterday, and drive-through and community-based testing. And I know how grateful the President is for the efforts that governors are making, and now with the Admiral and the United States Public Health Service as well as FEMA, we made great progress today in coordinating those efforts. But the other issue that was raised with the President today was personal protective equipment. And the reason I mentioned testing is because one of the recommendations that we have for states is that these remote testing sites make a priority of two groups. One would be people over the age of 65 that have symptoms. We don't want them to go to hospitals or emergency rooms. We want them to go to a remote site in a parking lot or at a isolated community location. But the other category is our healthcare workers. We want to make sure that our healthcare workers have the opportunity to be tested, and using that new high throughput test that the President arranged with our major commercial labs, we'll be able to do that much more expeditiously. So we're putting a real priority on our extraordinary healthcare workers that are at this very hour coming alongside people that are struggling with the coronavirus and people that are concerned that they may have been exposed. The other piece is we're grateful that the legislation passed by the House of Representatives includes liability protection for N95 masks produced by companies like 3M in Minnesota, by Honeywell. Literally tens of millions of masks are produced every year for industrial purposes, for construction. But the health experts say they can be used just as readily to protect healthcare workers from respiratory ailments. 3M and other companies were not able to sell those to hospitals, but the President negotiated with the Democratic leadership of the House and Senate. We've added a provision to the bill that will literally, from one company alone, add another 30 million masks per month back to the marketplace. We're strengthening the supply chain, and healthcare workers around America can be absolutely certain that the President and our entire team are going to continue to put the health of America first and put first our healthcare workers across this country that are meeting the needs of the people of our country.
Mr. Vice President, how many test kits have been sent out and how many people can actually be tested?
I think the Admiral can answer that. And you might want to talk about the roving also.
So thank you very much for that. As we talked about yesterday, we're really entering a new phase of testing. At first, we were at the initial phase where the CDC-developed test was only available in public health laboratories in the CDC. Works very well for a few thousand tests per day after it gets running. We're now moving into a phase that the big commercial laboratories with high throughput screening have availability. So as we talked about last week, because of the historic efforts of the FDA, a Roche test and, as the President predicted, a Thermo Fisher test were both produced last week under an emergency use authorization. 1.9 million of those tests will be sequentially into the ecosystem this week. From the information we have right now, 1 million tests are available with all the reagents, everything ready to go, primarily at the reference labs called Quest, LabCorp, and a couple others. Now, it doesn't matter if they're not in your neighborhood, because every day when people get tests, a little white box goes out in front, it gets shipped by an incredible distribution system. The test resulted and it's electronically reported. So these are available to people nationwide. We expect more and more than 1 million coming on board this week as the reagents come up and as people with the testing capacity validate that in their own hospitals and other places. And in the future, we expect at least 2 million next week and at least 5 million the week thereafter. There are also a whole growth of what's called laboratory determined testing or laboratory-derived testing, where individual laboratories, because of the regulatory deregulation of the FDA, can develop their own tests and start using them. So if you're a CLIA-certified lab with complexity, you can do that. So the point is, testing is now entering sort of what we normally do in the healthcare system, where big labs in a high throughput basis receive these through normal channels. So that part of it is really underway.
But do you know how many Americans have actually been tested? Do you have a number?
There is a number. I don't have that number because I've been working on setting up this distribution system. So this is where we are. The state and public health laboratories in the CDC are published every day on the CDC website. The CDC gets feeds from LabCorp and Quest, and they get that on a daily basis. What is not being received right now, and Ambassador Birx is fixing, is that these homegrown tests in highly complex labs don't necessarily get reported in the system. However, as we move forward, particularly in the commercial phase of where we are right now, we expect about 80 to 85% of the tests to flow right into the CDC. We know them. That's not good enough for Ambassador Birx. She wants 100, and we'll work on that.
Sir, are you
So I think, just to put it a different way, a lot of testing has been going on, and I don't believe anybody's been able to do what we're doing and what we will be doing.
And let me just say that we talked about the drive-through testing yesterday. I want it to be clear to everybody, this is just another tool for states and local public health systems and healthcare systems to use. It's not replacing testing that it goes on in a doctor's office or in a hospital, or if you go to your doctor and wants to get tested in that office. This is just another tool that we're helping the states to have. And again, as we talked about, this is modeled on the FEMA-based points of distribution system optimized for testing. We expect this week, we now have gear, people being shipped right now today that will be in over 12 states with multiple sites, many of states having multiple sites, to start augmenting the local capacity and really providing the state and the local people what they need as another way for people to get tested.
Mr. President. So this has never been done before. That's never been done, and certainly not on a level like that. And I will say that I think I can speak for the professionals that if you don't have the symptoms, if your doctor doesn't think you need it, don't get the test. Don't get the test. I think that's very important. Not everybody should run out and get the test. That's right. But we're able to handle tremendous numbers of people. John?
Mr. President, earlier today, Governor Cuomo of New York said that he believes that hospital capacity soon will be overwhelmed and implored you to call on the Army Corps of Engineers to build temporary facilities to house patients. Is that something
we're looking into? It. We've heard that. We've heard it from really two places. There are two places that have specifically, New York being one, and we are looking into it very strongly. Yeah.
Steve, go ahead, please. Sir, how have you changed your own behavior to take account of this virus? Are you washing your hands more?
Oh, I've always washed my hands a lot. I wash my hands a lot, probably, maybe if anything more, certainly not less.
What was it like taking the test?
Not something I want to do every day. I can tell you that. It's it's a little bit of good doctors in the White House, but it's a test. It's a test. It's a medical test. Nothing pleasant about it.
You had said that in a tweet that Governor Cuomo should be doing more.
I think he can do more.
What specifically
but I think he can do more. And it's an area of the country that's very hot right now. I think New Rochelle, and a place I know very well. I grew up right near New Rochelle. I think it's an area that has to be tamped down even more because it's a hotbed. There's no question about it. So I think they can look at doing it. But we're getting along very well. We've had a very in fact, I noticed he made some statements just now that the relationship with the federal government has been good. The federal government has done everything they've wanted us to do. But we can, I think it's very important that all of the governors get along very well with us and that we get along with the governors. And I think that's happening.
Mr. President, that people should not.
I have the President. The Defense Secretary and the Assistant Defense Secretary have decided to separate and be in a bubble to avoid the spread of the disease and to protect the chain of command. Is that something you and the Vice President should be doing? And has there been any talk about having to have a 25th Amendment?
Well, we haven't thought of it, but I will say this: that we're very careful. We're very careful with being together. Even the people behind me they've been very strongly tested. I've been very strongly tested, and we have to be very careful. But everybody should be vigilant. We have to be vigilant. Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. President. Two simple questions for you, Mr. President.
Go ahead, please.
Two simple questions for you, Mr. President.
Hold it before you.
Okay. I don't know if this is a question for you or for Dr. Burke, but Dr. Burke said that it is the millennials who are going to lead us through this, and that now is the time to look out for the older people in our home. Older might be a state of mind, not necessarily an age. So for those millennials of us who have parents who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, what is older? What should we tell them at this point?
Well, if I was Dr. Fauci, I would tell you there's a physiologic age and a numerical age. So older people with pre-existing conditions. And what do we mean by that? Significant heart disease, significant kidney disease, significant lung disease, any immunosuppression, any recent treatment for cancer, any of those pieces in any household. Now, why do I think the millennials are the key? Because they're the ones that are out and about. And they're the most likely to be in social gatherings. And they're the most likely to be the least symptomatic. And I think we've always heard about the greatest generation. we're protecting the greatest generation right now and the children of the greatest generation. And I think the millennials can help us tremendously by having, plus they need to communicate with each other. Public health people like myself don't always come out with compelling and exciting messages that a 25 to 35-year-old may find interesting and something they will take to heart. But millennials can speak to one another about how important it is in this moment to protect all of the people. Now, you could be 40 and have a significant medical condition and be a substantial risk. You could be 30 and having come through Hodgkin's disease or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and be of a significant risk. So there are risk groups in every age group, but there's more millennials now than any other cohort, and they can help us at this moment.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. You already talked. Mr. President, the other day you said that you were not responsible for the testing shortfall. Very simple question. Does the buck stop with you? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it at 10. I think we've done a great job. And it started with the fact that we kept a very highly infected country, despite all of even the professionals saying, no, it's too early to do that. We were very, very early with respect to China. And we would have a whole different situation in this country if we didn't do that. I would rate it I would rate ourselves and the professionals. I think the professionals have done a fantastic job. As far as the testing, you heard the Admiral. I think the testing that we've done, we really took over an obsolete system, or put it maybe in a different way, a system that wasn't meant to do anything like this. We took it over, and we're doing something that's never been done in this country. And I think that we are doing very well. We took the system, we worked with the system we had, and we broke down the system purposely. We broke it down in order to do what we're doing now. And within a short period of time, and even now, we're testing tremendous numbers of people. And ultimately, you're saying it will be what? It will be up to how many people will we be able to test?
We certainly expect with the high throughput testing that's no longer a barrier. The barrier is actually doing the test on a person. And I'm sure, as the president would inform you, in order to do the test, a healthcare provider needs to dress in full personal protective equipment. And there's a swab that's put in the back of the nose all the way to the back of the throat. It's called a nasopharyngeal swab, which is then put in media. The next person who has to get tested, that healthcare provider has to change all the personal protective equipment. When you put that in, it's highly likely a person coughs or sneezes, so you're at risk. So that's what we're trying to fix now by the mobile platforms, by all the things we're doing, is to enable sort of high throughput of this swabbing. And we're doing some technological things, too, that might be breakthroughs to make it much, much faster. But we certainly expect that from thousands of people per day, we will be at the tens of thousands of people per day this week, according to those who are.
But does the buck stop with you, Mr. President? Does the buck stop with you?
Yeah, normally, but I think when you hear this has never been done before in this country. If you look back, take a look at some of the things that took place in 09 or 11 or whatever it may have been. They never did. Nobody's ever done anything like what we're doing. Now, I will also say, Admiral, I think we can say that we're also getting this ready for the future, so that when we have a future problem, if and when, and hopefully we don't have anything like this, but if there is, we're going to be we're going to be starting off from a much higher plateau, because we were at a very, very low base. We had a system that was not meant for this. It was a smaller system. It was meant for a much different purpose. And for that purpose, it was fine, but not for this purpose. So we broke down the system, and now we have something that's going to be, and is very special, and is ready for future problems. I think we can say that very strongly. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
How close are you to shutting down America's northern border with Canada? And could you also speak to the fact about the elections that are supposed to be taking place tomorrow? Is it your advice that those states postpone those elections?
Well, I'd leave that up to the states. It's a big thing, postponing an election. I think, to me, that really goes to the heart of what we're all about. I think postponing an election is a very tough thing. I know they're doing, because they've been in touch with us, they're doing it very carefully. They're spreading people out at great distances, as you can see. And I think they'll do it very safely. I hope they do it very safely. But I think postponing elections is it's not a very good thing. They have lots of room in a lot of the electoral places, and I think that they will do it very well. But I think postponing is unnecessary.
On the northern border, sir, how close are you to
We think about it. We think about it. If we don't have to do it, that'll be good. We have very strong emergency powers when it comes to something like this, both on the southern and the northern borders, and we are talking about different things, but we'll see. Right now, we have not decided to do that. Steve?
Can we get Dr. Fauci to talk about the vaccine trial today and whether the timetable for vaccine is it possible to accelerate, or is it still 12 to 18 months?
So, thank you for that question. The vaccine candidate that was given the first injections for the first person took place today. You might recall when we first started, I said it would be 2 to 3 months, and if we did that, that would be the fastest we've ever gone from obtaining the sequence to being able to do a phase 1 trial. This has been now 65 days, which I believe is the record. What it is, it's a trial of 45 normal individuals between the ages of 18 and 55. The trial is taking place in Seattle. There will be 2 injections, one at 0 day, first one, then 28 days. There will be 3 separate doses, 25 milligrams, 100 milligrams, 250 milligrams, and the individuals will be followed for 1 year, both for safety and whether it induces the kind of response that we predict would be protective. And that's exactly what I've been telling this group over and over again. So it's happened. The first injection was today.
Sir, the market just closed down 3,000, almost 13%. Your response to the market close, sir?
Is pregnancy an underlying
Thank you. Dr. Fauci, is there guidance for someone who may have felt sick but then feels better, so you had symptoms but you no longer do, your fever's gone away? How long would you stay home after that point? That's not clear from the guidelines.
Well, if you are positive for the infection, if you have coronavirus, it is less how you feel than whether or not you're still shedding virus. So the general issue about letting people out of a facility, who, for example, a hospital or whatever, who have been infected, you need 2 negative cultures, the same way that was just described, 24 hours apart.
No, the market will take care of itself. The market will be very strong as soon as we get rid of the virus. Yes.
Could you clarify about pregnant women? Is that an underlying? Because the UK said today that pregnancy was one of those underlying conditions. Do we say that too?
There's very little data in pregnant women. I think about a week ago, I said the reports that came in from China, from the Chinese CDC, of the 9 women who were documented to be pregnant and have coronavirus in their last trimester, delivered healthy children, and they themselves were healthy and recovered. That is our total sample size, and we will be getting more data from countries. While countries are in the midst of this crisis, like Italy, I try not to bother them frequently to get us their data. We try to get it just weekly from the countries that are in the midst of responding to the epidemic, so that their focus is on their individuals in their country.
Mr. President, any comment on what people like Devin Nunes, the governor of Oklahoma, have been saying, encouraging people to go out to restaurants, which goes directly against what this advice in your guidelines says?
No, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that from Devin or anybody else.
Should they stop saying that?
Well, I have to see what they said. But
they encourage people to go to restaurants if they felt okay with their families.
I would disagree with it, but right now we don't have an order one way or the other. We don't have an order, but I think it's probably better that you don't, especially in certain areas. Oklahoma doesn't have a tremendous problem. Oklahoma, you said the governor of Oklahoma.
Devin Nunes is another.
Yeah, well, I hadn't heard that.
So should they be doing that, or should they not be doing that?
Well, it's adverse to what the professionals are saying. That's,
and what you're saying in your guidelines, that people shouldn't be going to restaurants.
No, it's adverse, but I'll take a look at it. Absolutely.
I don't know who would be best to answer this question, maybe Secretary Hayes or Dr. Fauci. School districts across the country are closing down, yet for the most part daycare centers remain open, and considering that children can sometimes be asymptomatic carriers and go home to older individuals, are there any recommendations about daycare centers?
I'd prefer if one of our medical professionals
please.
discuss that. That's a clinical recommendation.
That's a good question, John. In the original guidelines as they were presented, it was schools, not daycare. I think it's very important. We should probably, if we have not discussed that, go back and discuss that in some detail about whether or not that's equivalent to school. It's a good question.
A question about the sort of underlying public health strategy behind some of these guidelines. Telling people to avoid restaurants and bars is a different thing than saying that bars and restaurants should shut down over the next 15 days. So why was it seen as being imprudent or not necessary to take that additional step, offer that additional guidance?
Well, you want to answer that?
Well, I think we have to say the data that has been coming out, and I'm sure you're all up to date on how long the virus lives on hard surfaces. And that has been our concern over the last 2 weeks.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead. I just wanted to read. There's an answer to this.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Tony. He was my mentor, so I'm going to have to let him speak.
The small print here, it's really small print. In states with evidence of community transmission, bars, restaurants, food courts, gyms, and other indoor and outdoor venues where groups of people congregate should be closed.
So, Mr. President, are you telling governors in those states then to close all their restaurants?
Well, we haven't said that yet.
Why
we're
not?
recommending, but we're recommending things. No, we haven't gone to that step yet. That could happen, but we haven't gone there yet. Please.
So on the election, you're saying it's a bad thing to postpone it, but if you've got the 10-person maximum, guideline, in a practical sense, can you have rallies? Can you primaries surely gather more than 10 people?
Well, hopefully this will pass through, and hopefully that we'll have everybody will be going to restaurants and flying and being on cruise ships and all of these different things that we do, and it will very, very hopefully be in a fairly quick period of time. But we're taking a tough stance. We may make certain other decisions. We may enhance those decisions. We're going to find out. As per the question that you were asking, some of those decisions may be had. How about one more?
On the cyber attack on HHS,
Yeah.
is there any reason to believe that they were trying to hack into the system and gather information from the system? And also, is there any reason, so were they trying to hack to get information? And also, do you have any reason to think that it could have been Iran, Russia? Do you have any reason to believe it was a foreign actor?
So in the previous 24 hours, we saw a great deal of enhanced activity with relation to the HHS computer systems and website. Fortunately, we have extremely strong barriers. We had no penetration into our networks. We had no degradation of the functioning of our networks. We had no limitation of our capacity for people to telework. We've taken very strong defensive actions. The source of this enhanced activity remains under investigation, so I wouldn't want to speculate on the source of it, but there was no data breach or no degradation in terms of our ability to function and serve our important mission here. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President,
what are you looking for in another stimulus package, sir? Could you speak to that?
One thing Mike just said, it's very important to get out that this is for the next, what we're talking about, much of what we're talking about is for the next 15 days. Mike, go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, have you been tested?
I've not been tested yet. I'm in regular consultation with the White House physician, and he said I've not been exposed to anyone for any period of time that had the coronavirus, and that my wife and I have no symptoms. But we're checking our temperature regularly every day, and we'll continue to follow guidance, which I think may be a good place to land at the end of the day. And that is, as we expand testing rapidly around the country through the new public-private partnership that the President facilitated, we want the test to be available for people who have symptoms, people who have symptoms and are in vulnerable populations, and our healthcare workers, to make sure that they can have the peace of mind that they're doing their jobs and they're properly protected. And so our best counsel, the counsel of the experts, is if you have a question, call your doctor, call your healthcare provider, ask whether or not you should be tested, and that's what my family's doing as well. Let me just emphasize one more point, if I can. The President asked the task force to continuously review the data and the information that we have, not only in this country, but from around the world, to give the best guidance to state leadership and local healthcare leadership and all of the American people about how to keep themselves, their family, and their community safe. This guidance for the next 15 days is what our experts say is the best opportunity we have to lower the infection rate over the entire course of the coronavirus. Just as the president did by suspending travel from China, just as he did with travel advisories and screening from Italy and South Korea, just as we've done with Europe and at midnight tonight with the UK and Ireland. We'll continue to take very decisive steps to lower the spread of the coronavirus. But we want every American to know, and we would ask all of you in the media to spread the word of the American people that this is advice on behalf of the President of the United States to every American, what you can do over the next 15 days to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. And we're calling on every American to do your part, because together we'll get through this and we'll find our way forward.
Mr. President, just one more, Steve. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, what do you think of the
G7 video conference?
G7.
What was the upshot of that? And are you still going to be able to meet at Camp David? I think
it looks like it.
And are you confident in their responses, as you are with your own?
I'm very confident that they're in a position that some of them are in a rough position. If you look at a couple of them, and some are heading toward pretty rough territory. We had a very good conference. It was a teleconference. Everybody was on the phone, every leader. And almost 100% was devoted to the subject that we're talking about today. And they are working very hard. And they're very concerned, obviously, but they're working very hard. But I would say just about all of it was, Steve, all of it was devoted to what we're talking about.
Hold that summit at Camp David?
I think so. I mean, so far it seems we didn't even discuss that. Still a ways off, but it was a very good discussion, and they have. There's a great camaraderie. There's a great togetherness. I think I can say that very, very strongly. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, you've been listening to President Trump surrounded there by the coronavirus task force and giving an update. Jason, I do feel like there are some key headlines. What's interesting is, and I will say this mirrors a lot of the conversation that we've had in the newsroom about being out and about, whether it's in New York City or surrounding cities, and still seeing a fair amount of people out at restaurants. Of course, that is shut down now as governors and mayors are shutting down restaurants within their districts. But really a plea, I feel like, to a younger community, millennials, something that Dr. Deborah Birx said that really kind of send shivers through a little bit through my spine. Millennials are key because they're the ones that are out and about. We are protecting the greatest generation and the children of the greatest generation, and just really those more vulnerable populations in terms of the virus.
Yeah, it was a pretty remarkable almost hour that we saw the president and some of his top aides, the vice president, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, as you mentioned, really going through step by step in more detail than we have heard from the federal government in terms of recommendations. Don't gather in groups of more than 10 people. That's new. Don't go to bars and restaurants. From a federal level, that's new. As you said, we've seen that on the local and the state level. And I think perhaps among the most notable things, the president saying this is a stance we could be in, something that we're dealing with on some level or another until July or August. And that certainly is not the posture that this administration has taken to this point.
Yes, I felt like that. It was a very, very different president who was up there at the podium. I do want to bring in Laura Davison. She is with our Bloomberg News Washington team. She joins us on the phone. She's working home. She's in Northern Virginia. Laura, your takeaways. I do feel like it was a very different tone from the president and his team, whereas if you go back several weeks, a month or so, where folks were essentially not as concerned about the spread and impact of the virus.
Yes, this is really the most sort of specific guidance kind of on a household level, on a per person level on what to do to not gather with more than 10 people, to stay away from bars, restaurants, movie theaters, really encouraging everyone that can to school from home, to work from home, which is really different than what we heard even just last Friday, which was more about kind of economic measures to take, or, just keeping your distance and a lot of the testing issues that were coming up. This was really a plea, particularly to millennials, that came up several times to stay at home. And as you noted, over the weekend here in D.C., Georgetown, restaurants and bars were still full of people. And so we saw over the weekend a lot of states and municipalities say, hey, we're just going to shut all of that down. Restaurants will be takeout only, close movie theaters, close bars, close concert venues, kind of seeing that people, even though some people have taken it seriously, not everyone has. And of course, that's what you need in order to stop spreading a highly contagious disease.
Well, and as Carol said, that plea to millennials was really quite a moment for sure. Laura, help us understand, because you've been following this more closely than we have, although we've been following it pretty closely. The tone has shifted, as you said. What else did you hear or see that was different in either the specifics or in the posture?
Well, really, it was, sort of this recognition of, look, this is where we are. We may be headed into a recession. That's something that Trump has literally never said. That saying, hey, brace yourself, this could cause a recession. And we also are going to be here for several months. This is essentially outlining, going to set those expectations that this could be the new normal. And also sort of warning, if people don't heed this advice, don't take it seriously, it could be worse. That you could see hospitals overrun. And kind of really trying to hit that message home that, look at Italy, look at the other places. That's where we could be if we don't all make some sacrifices now.
Well, and I will say Doug Krisner's been sitting next to me. He's working on news updates and business flashes, and, said to me the market is telling us and reminding us that this is going to be around for a long time. Yeah. I mean, to see the selling as this roughly 1 hour press conference and update on the virus was going on, we saw stocks take another leg down. And I think there were some key things out of the president in terms of how long this could stay around, as you guys were just talking about, July or August. And also, I feel like for the first time, the president acknowledging that the U.S. economy may be heading to recession. And, while he's saying that on the other side, pent-up demand will reverse the virus economic impact, in the interim, we're talking about several months where we are going to be in a difficult position when it comes to our economy. And I think the bigger question is, as we start to see programs come out of Washington in terms of fiscal programs and policies to help the American public, help some of those small businesses, that will be necessary to kind of soften the blow, if you will, because that is going to be very key and really important to some people's livelihood, where people who don't work don't get paid.
Yes, so we've seen a really rapid response just today on Capitol Hill of lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats, calling for some sort of checks to be sent to every household. They're approaching it a little bit differently. Democrats are mostly targeting those checks to people earning less than about $65,000 a year. Republicans have plans for checks to go out to every household. This is something that would have been unthinkable just even a couple days ago, that this kind of fiscal stimulus would be discussed. And now it's one of those things that almost seems inevitable as Congress sort of weighs what their next steps are on how to react to this.
Well, and Laura, one, I guess, bit of good news, if you can call it that, came for the airline industry, with the president saying, we're going to back the airlines 100%. You did see, among a lot of selling, those stocks, at least temporarily, move up a little bit. Did that surprise you that he was that specific, or is that the sort of thing that we've been expecting to hear?
We've been expecting that for several days. The White House has been volleying around lots of different ideas about how to help the airline industry specifically. But kind of the Trump saying we're behind them 100%, we're going to backstop them, does give the airline industry some hope. Though a note of caution on that is that Congress likely needs to be involved in this. So there is some Democratic resistance to anything that props up businesses. Specifically, Democrats are more looking at the angle of how do we help businesses retain payroll and give them some sort of tax credit to do that, versus targeting specific industries and picking winners.
Well, and that's going to be difficult, right, Laura? Because, you have about one industry, like where do you start to draw the line? Because there certainly will be a lot of industries that are going to be impacted by this, certainly in the short term. But it does speak to, we're looking more and more closely at the credit pictures, the, amount of debt on various companies and various industries' balance sheets. I mean, it's a slippery slope, though, once we start to do bailouts.
It really is. You think about, travel industry, cruise industry, airlines, but also, trucking industries, if there's supply side issues as well, you're looking at restaurants and bars, movie theaters. It's really sort of endless. If everyone really, ends up basically staying at home for the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, it's almost hard to think of an industry that isn't affected somehow.
And so, Laura, amid all of this, we've got an election going on, and one of the notable things that the president said was he did not see, a need to postpone any elections. There are primaries scheduled for tomorrow. We have had a couple governors and local leaders come out and say they were going to postpone. I think Ohio being the latest. What's the sort of political backdrop to this, especially at a time where we seem to be narrowing the Democratic field?
Well, that's a key point here. If this had been even just a couple weeks ago when it was very unclear who the Democratic nominee would be, I think some of the reaction might be a little bit different now that Joe Biden is almost the presumptive nominee. The math is very difficult for Bernie Sanders at this point. You're seeing a lot of states saying, okay, we're going to push this back. We're not going to put people at risk for an outcome that might be a little bit more decided. But that is a key issue. And also, I think there's also a lot of concerns, too, just heightened risk and awareness of cybersecurity threats. We, found out last night that the Health and Human Services had an intruder come in and try to disrupt the system. The officials say that nothing was taken, that their systems aren't compromised. But that's another issue that's also weighing is on election officials.
Hey, Laura, hang on for a second, because we do want to remind everybody, of course, the market has closed officially that 4 p.m. bell. We were in the press conference at the moment. S&P 500 finishing just about at its lows. It was down nearly 12%, down 324 points at 2386. Dow Jones Industrial Average down nearly 13%, down 2,997 points at 20,188 was the close. NASDAQ down 970 points for a decline of 12.3%. The NASDAQ closing at 6904. Laura, I'm going to say goodbye to you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your input. Laura Davison of our Bloomberg News team out of Washington on the phone from Northern Virginia. But Jason, hard to ignore these market moves. Dow Jones Industrial Average falling to its lowest in 2 years. The market's not necessarily seeing much confidence here.
It's a new Black Monday. We haven't seen this since 1987. So we're going to dig into that and much more. Lots still ahead here on Bloomberg Business Week as we assess everything that's been going on from the virus to the markets. Stay tuned. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street hasn't seen a day this bad since 1987, with the major averages down nearly 12% or more. Fears are growing that the coronavirus pandemic will tip the economy into recession, despite the best efforts of the Federal Reserve to stop it. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged 29.97. The S&P 500 dropped 325, the NASDAQ Composite tumbled 970. As the coronavirus pandemic strains Amazon's e-commerce systems, it has put out the help wanted sign. The Wall Street Journal reports Amazon plans to hire 100,000 employees in the U.S. Amazon accounts for 39% of all online orders in the U.S., according to eMarketer. Cruise operators have enough liquidity to survive, even as many ride out the coronavirus pandemic in port. Nomura Securities thinks cruise companies have enough borrowing capacity, cash, and spending flexibility to stay afloat for roughly a year. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? You know, meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Right now at TradePoint, get 4 for 3 on a huge range of laminate flooring and tiles. Plus, if you've loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. So for a great deal on flooring and tiles, get to TradePoint. The value of every fourth item per single transaction in descending price order will be deducted. Offer ends 30th of March, subject to availability. See tradepoint.co.uk.
The moment you realise you've drilled through an electric cable. The moment you realise that doesn't just mean no telly on the wall, but no telly full stop. The moment you realise you've got British Gas Home Care. And not just your electrics, but your plumbing, heating and drains are all covered. So the moment you've got a problem, make it our problem. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care.
Make life easy with Sky TV and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q. Discover Sky originals like Intelligence.
I think we can learn a lot from each other.
Right next to Netflix originals like You.
It's nice to meet you, love.
Find them all side by side on Sky Q. So, get Sky Ultimate TV for just £25 a month. Easy. Visit sky.com and join today. Ends April 30th. Prices may change. 18-month minimum term on Sky Signature. Set up £20 requires Sky Q connected to broadband. Correct at March 13th. Terms apply.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, sliced down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
You know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
As passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience, an ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Are you seeing a lot more buying power on the part of younger people in China?
Financial news made in Asia for use everywhere.
It is a bit of a waiting game.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to check in with Drew Armstrong. He leads all of our health coverage for Bloomberg here in the U.S., and he'll give us an update on the company side of this, the personal side of it, the response, all of it. Really eager to get his latest, Carol.
Yeah, as the headlines continue to cross the Bloomberg on all of it. All right, let's get back to those closing numbers. A check with Doug Krisner.
Yeah, severe losses in the U.S. equity market today, and for the technicians,
when you close at the low of the day, it's not a good sign, and that's where we were for the Dow.
And the momentum,
S&P,
you saw it.
Absolutely. Volume today, more than 16 billion shares. That's not the greatest in terms of volume that we've had in the recent past. I think we did 19 billion on a late February, 16.1 billion today. So the Dow drops 13%, S&P 500 down 12%, NASDAQ comp more than 12% lower. One of the things that seemed to be playing out as we were moving up to the closing bell, listening to President Trump when he said the effort to combat the virus could last through July or even August, that's when the market took new lows. And then he went on to say that the U.S. economy may be heading to a recession given this epidemic. In the Bay Area, including the city of San Francisco, residents will be directed to shelter in place until April 7th.
Wow.
We got a U.S. 10-year Treasury down 22 basis points on the day, 73 basis points on the 10-year. So with the move down in long-term rates, a lot of the banks were weak. That's not surprising. The Bloomberg, or rather the KBW Bank Index, plummeting 16% today. Now, Carol, you were talking earlier in the program about 8 banks, the big banks here in the U.S., suspending their stock buyback programs and focusing on supporting clients during this pandemic. Consumer staple stocks showing the least bit of pressure, including some of the big grocers. Today, analysts over at Jefferies were saying, get this, American food sales could surge an extra $90 billion in 3 months. ConAgra today was up 10%. And Clorox getting a big boost from a double upgraded JP Morgan. The bleach maker has a unique position, obviously, in the prevention effort. The stock today was up by about 4%. Interestingly, in spite of the fact that rates come in, the dollar remains firm against the majors. Much stronger yen here at 105.87. That has the potential to hold us back quite a bit when the Japanese equity market comes online. The last thing, crude oil today down 10%. WTI near 28 a barrel. Carol.
Lots going on, Jason.
Doug Krisner, thank you so much. Let's turn now to Drew Armstrong. He leads all of our healthcare coverage, the business of healthcare, and all the rest of it here for Bloomberg in the United States. He joins us on the phone from New York City. Drew, I know your team is literally working around the clock. You and I were emailing late last night. You were in the midst of so much. What is the most important thing we need to know at this moment after the president's briefing and everything we saw on the stock market today?
I mean, it is one of the most remarkable days of news that I've ever seen here. The recommendations now coming from the White House are more or less for people to essentially stop living many aspects of their lives right now. That both means from a social standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and there's no way that this won't be incredibly disruptive personally to people and in terms of how they go to work and make money. I really don't think that can be underemphasized, and some of the reaction that you see in the market is probably reflective of that.
In terms of, controlling or containing or mitigating the virus at this point, I'm not quite sure what word we're supposed to use anymore, but I did think it was a plea to, I felt like the task force update, Drew, was really a plea to a younger generation, because we all came back from the weekend talking about, I know how to drive my daughter into the city, and, you could see people out and about, and restaurants were still open, things were still happening. It really was a plea that we can't do it, and now you can, because, you've got cities and restaurants being shut down, basically, except for delivery. But that was really a plea for people to really respect and follow the restrictions that are being put on society right now.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, we talk a lot about the restrictions, and I think so many of the things that are being asked of people are in order to protect vulnerable parts of the population, and that, mostly includes people who are older or people with comorbidities. But and when we say comorbidities, I'm sorry, I mean people with underlying illnesses. I think one of the things that is important to remember is that there are quite a lot of Americans who have pre-existing conditions, who have underlying illnesses. We have a great deal of diabetes, high blood pressure, and other illnesses in this country that do make large numbers of people, potentially vulnerable. And I think we're also dealing with a situation where we don't have a complete picture of exactly who is most at risk of this. And so sometimes the default here has been to be as conservative as possible. And what that ends up being is just incredibly, incredibly disruptive to people's lives.
Well, and also, Jason, I think about the story that Peter Coy had in the magazine about, to treat this virus or trying to mitigate the impact is going to be really problematic for the economy. And that's what we're seeing happening.
And Drew, I do want to ask you, because in normal times, your team is really tracking the pharmaceutical business and the healthcare business, sort of the business of keeping people well and treating them. What have you heard over the last couple of days or even today? We heard a little bit of an update about a potential vaccine moving a little bit faster. But where are we both in terms of the treatment and maybe even the testing side when it comes to those big healthcare companies?
Well, I mean, the vaccine, having a vaccine is ultimately is the best thing that we can possibly hope for here, because when we think about viral infections, there are two ways that you get immunity. You either get sick and get over it, or you get vaccinated. There may be some lucky tiny percentage of the population that for some reason or another that has some kind of immunity, and there's also a lot of people out there who tend to get mild disease. But, a vaccine is the low cost, and I mean cost in the most global sense possible, solution to these problems. We have essentially, that is the technology that has allowed us to have longer lifespans and to survive threats like this as a society. So it is the most important thing out there from a pharmaceutical industry standpoint. Treatments can be helpful, but I think at the same time, those also, we don't necessarily have any of those that are at this point known to work. There's a lot of experimentation being done. And I think it's worth keeping in mind that, we have only ever cured one virus in the history of the world, and that's hepatitis C. We have tried lots and lots and lots of others. We have done supportive care for things. We have managed to suppress HIV. But there's only one virus we've cured, and that's not amazing. A great track record.
All right, Drew Armstrong, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. We're going to let you get back to running the U.S. healthcare coverage for Bloomberg. Joining us on the phone from New York City. Carol, let's head out to Ed Baxter in San Francisco. He's got world and national headlines. Hey, Ed.
All right, Jason, hi. Trump administration issuing new guidelines for U.S. citizens.
Therefore, my administration is recommending that all Americans, including the young and healthy, work to engage in schooling from home when possible, avoid gathering in groups of more than 10 people, avoid discretionary travel, and avoid eating and drinking at bars, restaurants, and public food courts.
Now, President Donald Trump saying these are 15-day guidelines. The president says we may be dealing with a virus on some level until July or August, although, underline, these are 15-day guidelines. He also said he's spoken with member nations of the G7 and that there is a beginning of cooperation. The World Health Organization is saying it is essential for countries to test every suspected case and isolate patients immediately. The president also announcing that the first clinical trials of a vaccine have begun. He said this is the first notice. Now, the San Francisco Bay Area has taken things even further at this point. The mayor of San Francisco issuing new requirements. The mayor saying effective at midnight, San Francisco will require people to stay home except for essential needs. Necessary government functions and essential stores will remain open. She says the steps are based on the advice of health experts, and it is for the next 3 weeks. Now, this affects more than just San Francisco. It affects most all of the Bay Area, involving Santa Clara, San Mateo, Marin, Contra Costa, and Alameda counties. A news briefing is ongoing. They are saying that exempted businesses are essential. Banks, trash collection, pharmacies, supermarkets, hospitals, of course, and more that are deemed essential. Restaurants can continue takeout, but much tougher here in the Bay Area. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The big B&Q Flooring and Tiles event is now on. Get a show-stopping 4 for 3 on a huge range of laminate flooring and tiles. So for an unmissable deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you B&Q it. The value of every fourth item per single transaction in descending price order will be deducted. Offer ends 30th of March, subject to availability. See DIY.com.
Make life easy with Sky TV and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q. Discover Sky originals like Intelligence.
I think we can learn a lot from each other.
Right next to Netflix originals like You.
It's nice to meet you, love.
Find them all side by side on Sky Q. So, get Sky Ultimate TV for just £25 a month. Easy. Visit sky.com and join today. Ends April 30th. Prices may change. 18-month minimum term on Sky Signature. Set up £20 requires Sky Q connected to broadband. Correct at March 13th. Terms apply.
Hey, Big Ears.
What?
Have you heard?
What?
Ford are offering £20 off a spring service.
You what?
That's right. £20 off when you book online using code FORD20. Problem is...
What?
We're rabbits.
Book now at Ford.co.uk or search Ford Service. Retail customers at participating Ford dealers. Cannot be used with other Ford service promotions. Only one voucher per customer per booking.
This week's On the Media, the president thought he could defeat the narrative of COVID-19 with his usual tactic of, quote, censorship through noise. But the virus is proving resistant.
People's lives are going to be disrupted on a daily basis, and as that happens, the alternate reality he's created is inevitably going to implode.
Catch On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC studios on TuneIn today.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, at 47 past the hour, let's get you caught up on what was a stomach-churning ride for financial markets globally. It took a dramatic turn here in the U.S. with the equity market plunging the most since Black Monday 1987. But to put that into context, the circumstances then very different than the ones that markets are facing right now. We had a hyper-aggressive move out of risk. Oil down today nearly 10% with WTI 28.61. The Dow tumbles 13%. S&P 500 down 12%. NASDAQ comp weaker by more than 12% on the day. And if you're a technician, a worrisome point is that we closed at the low point of the day. Now, the Fed overnight went all in with that rate cut, actually late in the day yesterday, Sunday U.S., to the zero bound. It couldn't prevent the losses, though, that we saw today. It also expanded the balance sheet to the tune of $700 billion, some in U.S. sovereign buying, others in agency-backed, mortgage-backed securities. And at the same time today, the International Monetary Fund pledged to mobilize its trillion-dollar lending capacity. That, too, seemed to have little impact. Total volume today on the equity side, more than 16 billion shares. Long-term interest rates come in. 10-year Treasury down nearly 24 basis points now in the extended session. 10-year is at 72 basis points. The dollar firm against the majors with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index rising 0.2%. Much stronger yen here at 105.97. The yen gaining 1.5% against the greenback. I'm Doug Krisner. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Doug, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. You know, as we were listening, Carol, to everything that the president and his team were saying, we were also watching the markets, and it's another Black Monday. I mean, it's just that simple. You know, we saw a record drop, the worst since 1987.
But I will say it's a little bit of a different feel, and we need to remember that in terms of what caused us, what got us there. Yeah. So it is, I feel like we have to be very careful making that comparison. Percentage-wise, it's also different, too. But I just think we have to be careful about kind of what got us here. And I think whether it was Black Monday or whether it was the financial crisis, we knew what got us there. Right. And I feel like everybody then was, you know, all hands on deck to kind of figure out how to fix it. And I think that's not necessarily, it's getting maybe better, but we don't know when this ends. And
it's a different sort of crisis, yes, for sure. All right, Jeff Krumpelman is back with us. Love talking to him. So smart. Chief Investment Strategist and head of equities for Mariner Wealth Advisors. Joining us on the phone from Cincinnati. All right, Jeff, put this in context for us. As Carol just rightly pointed out, a different sort of crisis. Help us understand this from your perspective.
So, yeah, I mean, stomach churning was, I think, one of the adjectives that was used at the outset of the program, and definitely it has been stomach churning. But I think it would be more stomach churning if we weren't doing the things that we're doing right now, which I think should be cheered, if you will, and not jeered. I'm comforted by what I've actually seen in the last couple of days. I think we are now seeing a three-pronged attack on coronavirus. We're addressing the health issues here through social distancing. I think what the governors are doing are pretty amazing. We're ramping up the testing kits and the capacity at the testing labs finally, and I was heartened to hear Dr. Scott Gottlieb come out and say, hey, you know, we've got a kind of 6 to 8 week time frame here that's going to be tough, but we're really starting to do the things that we need to do, and let's don't take our foot off the accelerator. And we got the monetary policy to kind of help be a bridge from a liquidity standpoint, and then we've got some fiscal things going on to help, you know, workers and small business kind of get through this transitory soft patch that we're going to have that's going to be swift and deep, but I do think that it's going to be over in a reasonable timeline here. And the only other thing I'll say up front to put this in perspective, every time we face challenge, and this is you know, big challenge, there's no doubt about it, and we use these big words like unprecedented. You know, each one of these points of challenge, they're different, and they're different challenges, and each is unprecedented, but you've got to look at the factors that can get you through it. And one of the timelines that I think is most similar and surreal is 9/11. And I think that we forget going back then that we were, we had the New York Stock Exchange that was shut down for weeks. We weren't traveling. We've got Broadway plays about, planes landing in Flanders, Newfoundland, and stuck there for days, not able to get home, worried about anthrax, and we didn't know if we were going to be attacked again. And yet the market, after selling off 14% in the week following, over 20% in a couple of weeks from September through the end, we were back to where we were in a very reasonable point of time before all that happened.
But Jeff, can I jump in? I love that. I love your calming, demeanor here. And I do think at some point we all have to step back and say, yeah, this is a pretty tricky situation, and we're certainly not at the peak of it yet. And we will get to the other side. But I still think, how do you make sense? We basically are almost erased the very strong rally that we got in 2019 on the major equity averages. This has been deep and fast in terms of the sell-off. What are the backstopping measures that we need to get to give investors some support here?
So I think that at times of this where you have swift corrections, some people call them bear markets. I think that recession and bear markets, you have all these technical definitions. I think what matters is not absolutes, but trends. And what you want to avoid is whiplash. And that's what I would caution investors. First and foremost, yes, we can have swift downdrafts like we've just seen, and this happens to be the swiftest. But you have these swift downdrafts, and you can have equally violent rallies, and they can turn on a dime. And 87 is a great example of that. And when you've had the carnage that's taken us 27% down off the top at this point very swiftly, to sell into this at this point, which is pretty much on average for these deep corrections that happen in the market, generally from this point you've got very little downside, and you can quickly, and we saw it on Friday, all you need is a little good news to get you moving in another direction. And this is not a structural, and I think this is critical, this is not 2008 when banks were failing and we had massive dislocations and recession that was created by business cycle, not through self-induced quarantine. You can get through that as long as you stop this curve of acceleration in the U.S., and we see it in China. And these are the things that give me just comfort. China has gotten through this, and you might want to take a look at their stock market, which actually has held up pretty darn well, and they got through this curve in about 2 months. Now that we're employing these different strategies, and you have, I think, a unified approach here, which is 9/11-ish in fashion, where the country's coming together here to get us through this soft patch. That, to me, is a far better situation, even though it's unprecedented, than structural, train wreck out there, which we've seen at other points in our history. So I think we're going to see a 20% kind of hit to earnings in, Q2, Q3. You're going to see what will be considered a technical recession. I think the odds are pretty high. But by the same token, if you can bridge that kind of weak soft patch, the trend, and it's not absolutes, but trend, I think you'll see Q3, Q4 start to see things get less worse. And that's what recovery is. Less worse, stable, and better. And the market will love it, and it will discount it in advance. And that's what I'm looking at.
All right, Jeff. Well, a note of optimism from you, and we do trust you, and hope you'll be back in New York soon at a Broadway show. We can all hope that that'll happen sooner rather than later. All right, Jeff Crumpleman, thank you so much. Chief Investment Strategist, Head of Equities for Mariner Wealth Advisors, on the phone from Cincinnati. More ahead from Carol Master in Manhattan, me, Jason Kelly, up here in Sleepy Hollow. This is Bloomberg.
Experts like to be part of Bloomberg surveillance.
What does the new Europe look like?
For the same reason we're recommending it to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. The world fell just 1/10 of a degree short of sharing the record for the warmest winter in 141 years. The U.S. National Centers for Environmental Information says globally the combined land sea temperature was 2.02 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average and just a tenth of a degree below the record set from December 2015 through February 2016. While the calendar on the wall says spring doesn't begin until March 19th, meteorologists define winter as having ended in February. Electricity demand in Europe and the U.S. will make weekdays seem like weekends as the coronavirus prompts more countries to tell people to stay home. In Italy, demand slumped 7.4% last Wednesday versus a week earlier after schools were shut and workers were told to stay home. That trend is threatening to spread around the globe. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Tarrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin? I do not speak Mandarin.
I just wanted to check that.
Almost as much as they enjoy grilling economic experts.
When this is over, do you bounce back or is there a lasting weakness to it?
Which means that you will enjoy listening.
If things get worse, we're ready to do more.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York, I'm Doug Krisner, 5 p.m. on Wall Street. What a stomach-turning ride for global financial markets. It took a dramatic turn here in the States, where the equity market plunged the most since 1987. The losses worsened when President Trump said the effort to combat the coronavirus could last through July, even August. Dow Industrial Average losing 13% on the day. The S&P 500 was down about 12%. NASDAQ comp loses more than 12%. Total volume in the U.S. in terms of stocks, more than 16.1 billion shares. Long-term interest rates come in. If you look at the 10-year Treasury, we were down about 24 basis points, last quoted at a yield of 71 basis points. That had an adverse impact on the banks, not surprising. The KBW Bank Index of top lenders plummeting the most since 2009. We were down about 16%. Want to point out, too, that 8 of the big banks have suspended their stock buyback program, saying they will focus instead on supporting their clients during the epidemic. We had the airlines trading mixed. President Trump said we're going to back the U.S. carriers 100%. Now, the industry, we are told, is seeking grants and loans totaling as much as $58 billion from the federal government. On one hand, United Airlines shares down nearly 15%, but you look at American Airlines traded higher by more than 11%. Transport fuel prices crashed, along with WTI crude oil, which was down more than 9.5%. We closed New York trading $28.70. Gasoline futures down more than 21%. We also had diesel and jet fuel markets plunging, given the collapse in consumption. The dollar firm against the majors, with the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index rising 0.2% on the day. I'm Doug Krisner from Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York. That is your Bloomberg Business.
Did you forget
Flash.
where you were for a moment?
For a moment, I did.
Get a little scared. I mean, I know Jason's and Sleepy Holly. Do they call it Sleepy Holly during the holidays?
No, they do not.
Jason's like, don't you make fun of my town.
Don't do it, Carol Master. This is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right. You are, of course, listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio, watching us on YouTube. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly.
They're watching you. I'm just a slate, apparently.
I know. I'm like, are you okay there? No, the kids are bringing Jason chocolate to wake him up. I think it was a Cadbury egg that he got earlier. Vince Signorella, global macro strategist. He, too, is working from home. He joins us on the phone from New Jersey. He contributes to the Macro Squawk Desk, which you can listen to live breaking news every terminal by typing SQUA Go. How was your day? I mean, you were contributing to the blog, right?
Yeah, actually, I didn't do any writing for the blog today because I was saying too many things over the squawk function on the terminal. Could have easily had a record today, but I was trying to keep it down with all the states reporting closures of restaurants, etc., and all the governments reporting new cases. So it tried not to beat people over the head with that too much. It was saved for the key ones. But suffice it to say, there are more and more states, right down to Louisiana, Indiana, and so it's Washington State, just shutting things down, and New Jersey shutting down all schools as of, I think, Wednesday.
So, Vince, what was the most interesting thing you heard in between when you were talking to your trader buddies?
I think the most interesting thing was the Fed actually doing a second tranche of repo of $500 billion in the afternoon. Typically, it's just one, and that the takedown of that was only $19 billion. When I was speaking to traders, basically they said, we're fine. I mean, there may be some sand in the gears when it comes to money markets and short-term rates, but we don't need liquidity, and liquidity isn't an issue. We're waiting and hoping for a proper fiscal response from Washington, because what's needed in these markets is just that. We need a fiscal response. We had rates down at zero. As you can see, it's not flowing through the consumer. There's been no change in the 30-year mortgage rate. So none of this is going to impact the economy the way it needs to in order to support consumer spending and then earnings, et cetera, down the road. The second most interesting thing is you could see a shift in the consumers with Amazon announcing they're going to hire 100,000 more employees. Whether or not that this is a lasting thing where consumers like who've not transitioned to the net before do purchases or not will tell the tale down which way this economy goes in the future.
Well, and I will say Spencer Sofer had a story over the weekend that talked about, I think, Whole Foods in particular that were having some problems because people were ordering a lot more, and I think they were having some problems with some delivery, I guess, out of their Whole Foods unit, and so they've just had difficulty meeting demand. I have to say, we ordered something on Amazon, and we're still waiting for it.
Yeah.
I mean, things are just not coming in, and I understand it. But so you do understand what Amazon is doing. Vince, give us some clarity. We had a guest on, Jeff Crumpleman, a friend of the show, and he was basically being like, we need to calm down here and really look at things and understand that things will get back to normal. The economy will come back. How do you see this? You certainly have been involved in some of these other downturns that we've seen in the past, whether it was the financial crisis or other.
Yeah, I remember 1987 as well.
Yeah.
I think your guess is right. The problem with that is it's going to get a lot worse first.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just ramping up capacity to test, and once those numbers start coming in, people have often asked me, when do you step in and buy? And I think when you see the headlines, and may or may not, I'm obviously making this up at the moment, but when you see the headlines of where it really hits places like New York and San Francisco, the places where you'd expect this to have a significant impact, I think then that's where you'll start to see the curve sort of turn. When those peak, when you get the peak New York City type thing, I think that's when you see the peak of the virus and things will start to get better.
Well, and you know what's interesting, and Vince, by the way, we don't make up headlines or things around here at Bloomberg. Yeah. I'm just going to put that out. You kind of scared the hell out of all of us when you said that.
The heck.
But, you know, Jason, I thought about this when we talked to Drew Armstrong. Like, we have to remember that we've all been wanting testing, and as we do more testing, the number of cases are going to escalate dramatically, and that will scare people. But that's what we need to do to get a better understanding of maybe how many Wuhans we're going to be dealing with in the United States, or maybe it is just one. Like we have to get ready that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, and as Dr. Fauci said today, so if you think you're here, you're really here. So if we think we're at one place in the, and that's what he was referring to, more tests, more people. You know, we have a long way to go. It still hasn't really, you know, the numbers are jumping in New York City, but they're still far away from where they're obviously going to be. You know, Governor Cuomo said last week there are tens and tens of thousands of people in New York State who probably have it. We just don't know it yet. And Roche today announced that they're, you know, going to be shipping tests of about 400,000 per week. So when those start to land and those numbers start to come in, I'm afraid people are going to overreact and panic, and I think we could see, as Guggenheim's Menard today said, there's a 10 to 20% chance this is a 1930s moment. You know, he's not ruling it out.
Yeah, Scott Minard,
So, Vince, last question for you, 30 seconds to go. How's Wall Street functioning at this point? You know, everybody's working from home, sort of doing their thing. As you talk to people, how's it all working at the moment?
Occasional being dropped by your provider and things going down a little bit. I talked to one guy who put in an order. He said his system went down, and by the time it got back up, he was stopped out of his position going the other way. So a little bit of that going on. Generally speaking, I think, you know, we are seeing a lot of machine-driven trading and a lot of gapping in the markets, and that is almost certainly going to continue until we see the virus numbers level off.
Right, you take out different levels, right, and just some of the algorithms and the machine trading all just kicks in, and that's why you take it down. All right, Vince Signorello, thank you so much, global macro strategist at Bloomberg News, joining us on the phone from New Jersey.
Yeah, interesting insights, and love catching up with Vince because we know he really is, like, when he's not squawking, he is squawking to his buddies.
We really know he's old and he's seen a lot of market cycles. Is that what you're saying, Jason Kelly?
More that he's such a gadfly and he's always talking to people, and I love it. It's great insights. It's real world stuff. Speaking of a real guy, let's head out to San Francisco. Ed Baxter is there, where a lot of interesting things are happening around this virus containment. Hey, Ed.
Yeah, you bet. Why don't we start nationally? And thank you for the compliment. I'll take it when I can get it. Trump administration has issued new guidelines that include schooling at home, avoid groups of more than 10 people, avoid discretionary travel, and avoid eating at restaurants and at bars.
It seems to me that if we do a really good job, we'll not only hold the death down to a level that is much lower than the other way, had we not done a good job, but people are talking about July, August, something like that. So it could be right in that period of time.
Now, that's dealing with it. They quickly clarified, Dr. Fauci clarified, that these guidelines are for 15 days. Now, this is expanded to millennials as well, because the administration is saying that they could be carriers and not show symptoms, with a message of saving the lives of what was called at their news conference America's greatest generation. San Francisco Bay Area has gone further. As Jason alluded, San Francisco Mayor London Breed has issued requirements that basically set up a shelter-in-place effective tonight.
The new public health order that we're announcing will require San Franciscans to remain at home, with exceptions only for essential outings.
Now, basically for citizens to find out where they need to be now and stay there, effective the next 3 weeks at this point. It affects San Francisco, San Mateo, Marin, Contra Costa, Alameda counties. So Santa Clara is also in there. So that's Silicon Valley. Businesses are essential. Banks, trash collection, pharmacies, supermarkets, hospitals, and the like will stay open. So real dire in the Bay Area. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
Well, thank you so much, Ed. Really appreciate it. And, Carol, this is a story that Vince Signorella just mentioned in passing about Amazon. We also heard the president get asked a question that a reporter posed to him that Jeff Bezos apparently has been calling the White House. And, I mean, the setup for the question, not to be overly glib on a serious day, but it's like, is Jeff Bezos calling the switchboard? Be like, hey, it's Jeff. Can I talk to somebody because I want to help? But in all reality, Amazon, reported by Dow Jones at least, is said to hire 100,000 warehouse and delivery workers amid all of these shutdowns. And that goes to exactly what you're saying. The demand for ordering from Amazon is spiking.
Well, kudos to our Spencer Soper and Ed Ludlow, because they did a story late yesterday. Amazon suffering a technical glitch yesterday that affected online grocery orders through its Whole Foods and Amazon Fresh delivery services. And, they specifically said, as the virus has spread, we have seen, this meaning Amazon, have seen a significant increase in people shopping online for groceries. And so, this we saw when we started to see more people working at home and just trying to do a conference call using our in-house system, that it was just being maxed out. And so we're seeing that as well. But, kudos to Amazon that they are looking to hire more people into their warehouse and delivery. And I know a lot of these folks have moved towards, we'll drop it on your step and we'll leave. And, knock on your door, ring your doorbell, or call you, and you just pick it up. We've already started to see that with various deliveries, certainly in our neighborhood. So,
and you are seeing Prime even get pushed out a little bit. Like, I went to order something that I need for my home office, and Prime, which is normally 2 days, I'm going to get it like a day or two after that, which is not a big deal. I'm ordering a mouse. Like, it's not a huge thing.
Unless it's a mouse to do testing for the virus.
That's true.
Special virus. Read the magazine, everybody, if you don't understand that.
Oh, right. The special mice. Good. Yeah. Good tease.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Didn't see that coming.
I know.
In any case, Amazon. So maybe hiring amid all of this. This is Bloomberg.
All right, check us out. Right now, we are on YouTube. We do this every day, 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just visit youtube.com, search Bloomberg Global News.
Yo, look at this. What do you reckon? Should I swipe right? Yo, check this out. Yo, bro. Hey, look at this. Yo, look at this. Should I swipe right? Hey, look over here. Yo, bro, check this out. Look, I'm vomiting rainbows.
Oi, get your phone out my face. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry, mate. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
Right now at TradePoint, get 4 for 3 on a huge range of laminate flooring and tiles. Plus, if you've loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. So for a great deal on flooring and tiles, get to TradePoint. The value of every 4th item per single transaction in descending price order will be deducted. Offer ends 30th of March, subject to availability. See tradepoint.co.uk.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
You're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
In an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's Change.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
So we had a sell-off in the equity market today after the Fed went all in and cut to the zero bound, or cut rates on the Fed funds down to the zero bound. It couldn't prevent some of the losses that we had, not just here in the U.S., but globally. We had in Europe a lot of the indexes at least 5% lower on the day. Here in the States, it was far worse, with the Dow dropping by the most since Black Monday 1987. So we had the Dow giving back about 13%, S&P falls 12%, NASDAQ comp down more than 13%. Now the VIX index, a measure of fear, I should say, in the equity market, jumped to its highest level since 2009, a jump of 42%, last quoted at nearly 83 on that scale. Volume today, enormous, more than 16 billion shares trading hands. And in terms of long-term interest rates, the 10-year Treasury comes in by 24 basis points on a single day. We were last quoted in New York at 71 basis points on the 10-year. A lot of the airlines traded mixed. The Trump administration is basically promising, in the words of the president, to back the airlines 100%. Now, the industry is seeking, we are told, grants and loans totaling as much as $58 billion from the feds. A short while ago, we learned that Southwest is going to reduce its capacity by at least 20% from the period April 14th through June 5th. They are also suspending, or it is also suspending, future stock buybacks. I'm Doug Krisner at the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Carol.
All right, Doug Krisner, thank you so much. You're listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, I'm in our Interactive Broker Studio here at New York headquarters for Bloomberg. Jason Kelly out there at his home in Sleepy Hollow. I keep saying
Yeah, why can't you say Sleepy Hollow right? It's not that hard.
I know. I don't know. I like Sleepy Holly. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Listen, one way of measuring the virus and all those individuals now working from home, like Jason in Sleepy Hollow, could be by looking at call centers. So Robert Lacasio, he is founder and CEO of LivePerson. It's an AI-powered conversational platform for consumers to engage with companies. He joins us on the phone from New York City. Rob, great to have you back with us. You working from home?
Actually, I have a farm up in Connecticut, so I'm camping out over here with my family.
All right, so you're up there in Connecticut, one of the states in lockdown. Let me just first let's get that. Tell us about kind of how this is all impacting your life, not on a personal basis, but also as a professional basis, as someone who has to run a company.
Yeah, I've been running the company over 25 years, and I've gone through the financial crisis, 9/11, the internet implosion. So it's the same thing. We always look, you got to strengthen the balance sheet. You got to basically focus on your current customers and just move forward. But I've seen a lot over 25 years in running the business, and I don't see this any differently. Just a different set of changes that are happening in the industry, and especially to my industry. The contact center world is really being challenged right now because these are fixed locations with thousands of people inside these buildings. And so this is everyone talks about the workers who are in corporate headquarters and offices, but there are 3 million people in the United States that are in contact centers sitting three feet apart from each other. And they're there trying to service customers and make sure they're getting their bills paid and all that. That's the thing that we're focused on right now. As of last week, it's all hands on deck with my company trying to fix that problem.
Well, and Rob, it's interesting too. I mean, I know I'm not alone in this. I mean, I've gotten emails, especially from the big airlines, essentially saying, "Don't call us. Like, we just cannot handle everybody who's coming out at us right now." Is that a function of just huge volume in your estimation? Is it a function of staffing? Is it a collision of both? And how long will that sort of posture continue, you think?
Look, there's a future of contact centers. That we're selling messaging and chat and AI and automation, and that's why our company is doing very well. We service Delta and all the biggest brands in the world. But the call center, fundamentally voice and people sitting in like a factory line answering voice calls, this is from the past, and we're seeing the challenge. Like right now, we're very focused on getting people in their homes, the contact center agents. They can message from home. They can chat. They can use our software from home, but taking a phone call from home is virtually impossible.
Yeah.
So that's really the past is being challenged, the whole past structure of call centers, and they should be digital. They should be allowing homework. They should be out of that factory model, and that's what we're faced with today.
Well, I do wonder, too, and Jason and I keep having conversations with our guests, and just even in and around the newsroom, Rob, is what are the longer-term or lasting impact as a result of the virus, especially as more people do work home, and maybe they'll find out that it actually kind of works that way. And I do wonder how kind of AI and call centers and just having kind of a virtual capability in our world increasingly, how that might change longer term.
It should have happened years ago. This is obviously we've been preaching, but when you think of the world we live in, you and I were on our device all day. We're messaging our friends and family. We want to message brands. And we don't expect people to just be sitting in these contact centers. Why can't they be at home? Why can't they have the freedom to work like that? And they can. And that's really where all these companies should be. And we're taking them there. But I think this is really moving it because this is a risk. If you look at large banks or telcos in the U.S., they may have 20, 40, 50,000 people in contact centers per brand. So that's their largest employee pool. It's not people working in the corporate headquarters or corporate offices. It's in the contact center. So now this is sort of a shock to the system and saying there's got to be a different way to do this. We've been saying it, like automation and AI and bots, but now I think just the risk of not making the change is going to be very great for these companies, because if you call your bank and no one's there, you're going to get afraid. And so we know you can message somebody, you can easily do that, but calling being put on hold for 4 or 5 hours when you're trying to check your balance, people are going to get afraid.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Rob, because there is, and maybe this is just I am of a certain age, and maybe a millennial, we've been talking a lot about them lately, feels differently. Just 30 seconds here. Do we just outgrow this idea of like, I just want to talk to a human being, darn it? Is that just something of the past?
Yes.
We have in our minds that we should be talking to a machine. There are human agents that we want to talk to, but our volume's up 20% in the last week on our services, 130% in hospitality. So like everything's really, really going gangbusters, and there's a demand. Whether you're a millennial or you're 80 years old, you're messaging your grandkids if you're 80 years old. You're not talking to them anymore. So this plays into really the world we're living in today, especially once again, we had all these calls from our large enterprise customers. Can you get our agents home? We need to get them out of these contact centers because there's thousands of them sitting next to each other.
Right.
It's dangerous.
All right. Well, it's a really interesting perspective. Really glad to catch up with you. Rob Locascio is the founder and CEO of Live Person. He joined us on the phone from Connecticut. Great perspective. The world is changing for sure. And Carol, as you said, it's going to change a lot long term.
Jason Kelly, get used to that kid at home.
I know, exactly. This is Bloomberg.
Coffee or full breakfast? Have it at daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern. Bloomberg Daybreak.
We get a policy decision from the Federal Reserve
on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street hasn't seen a day this bad since 1987, with the major averages down nearly 12% or more. Fears are growing that the coronavirus pandemic will tip the economy into recession, despite the best efforts of the Federal Reserve to stop it. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged 29.97. The S&P 500 dropped 325. The Nasdaq Composite tumbled 970. As the coronavirus pandemic strains Amazon's e-commerce systems, it has put out the help wanted sign. The Wall Street Journal reports Amazon plans to hire 100,000 employees in the U.S. Amazon accounts for 39% of all online orders in the U.S., according to eMarketer. Cruise operators have enough liquidity to survive, even as many ride out the coronavirus pandemic in port. Nomura Securities thinks cruise companies have enough borrowing capacity, cash, and spending flexibility to stay afloat for roughly a year. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with the author of a fictional story about a global pandemic that right now feels all too real.
All I did was just drew upon the trends. I just extended them. Unfortunately, real life seems to have outraced even some of my imagination.
Lawrence Wright joins me on the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
you know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
Other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience. Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masterloh and Jason Kelly. You know what time it is?
Masterhenge?
It's Masterhenge time. I mean, the sun is coming through.
I can see it really clearly. I'm watching you over our VideoCon system, and it's actually even better from this angle than it is from my normal seat. You're even more angelic than usual.
Yeah, that's not really the truth, but that's okay. Thanks very much for saying, Jason Kelly. All right, coming up, we've got an interesting story about everything that's shutting down. America's big shutdown. A great story from our Anders Mellon here at Bloomberg News. So we're going to get into that, Jason, in just a moment.
First, Doug, is Dougie K there?
Yes,
I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Take it away.
All right. So we had a lot of risk off today. We'll talk about the numbers specifically, but this is after the Fed late last night went all in and cut the Fed funds rate to the zero bound. It obviously wasn't enough to prevent the steep losses that we saw today. One of the things that we are talking now about the inefficacy of monetary policy, and it looks like the market is becoming more comfortable with the idea that Congress has to be very aggressive here in moving the ball forward in that front. So today we have Mitt Romney, the senator from Utah, giving his backing to the idea of an immediate disbursement of checks to every adult American to the tune of $1,000. And then Republican Senator Tom Cotton was also saying that he is working on legislation to provide cash stipends. Several House Democrats are also backing the idea of sending checks as the best way to help households. I point that out only because the extraordinary measures that were undertaken yesterday by the Fed seem to fail. Right?
Totally.
So you cut rates by 100 basis points. You also increase the balance sheet to the tune of $700 billion. And look what happens to the equity market today. The Dow falling the most since Black Monday 1987. And I know that may not be an apt comparison, but it's true.
Right. But cutting rates and adding to your balance sheet or buying up, securities, that's not necessarily going to help the person at home who can't work and isn't seeing any income coming in.
Which is why we talked about the fiscal measures.
Yeah.
Dow today down 13%, S&P 500 down 12%, NASDAQ comp weaker by more than 12%. Long-term interest rates coming in. We've now got 36 basis points between the 2-year and the 10-year, so a little bit of slope to the yield curve, but look at what you're yielding now on the 10-year Treasury.
What is it?
71 basis points.
That just blows my mind.
Totally.
As soon as we broke 1%, was it a couple weeks ago or whenever that happened, everything from there on out has just surprised me.
The Japanification of the American economy, that's what it feels like we're dealing with right now. The dollar stronger against the majors. We've got a yen here at 105.95. You're telling me to wrap?
I am. Jason Kelly, take
Wrap
it
it
away.
up, prisoner.
Thank you, Doug.
All right, thanks, Doug. Let's get over to Anders Mellon now. He has been working his little tail off, trying to cover this from all angles. A couple stories we want to talk to him about. First, Anders, hello. Hope you're safe and well.
I am. Thanks for asking. Good to be with you guys.
Nice to be with you. All right, so the big shutdown is going on. Help us understand